Hi folks, I'm here having a celebrity encounter at the Rocky Mountain Raptor program with Flint, the American kestrel. And you also can have a cool celebrity encounter like this with the birds of the Rocky Mountain Raptor program, and you don't even have to come here and volunteer to do it. You can go to Perry's Pizza in North Glen on August 20th, 2026 from 4 to 8 p.m. And proceeds, I believe 20% of the proceeds, if you name Rocky Mountain Raptor program or show that you're there for that, will go to Rocky Mountain Raptor program. So you can benefit the birds and get to meet them. Also, if you'd like to help Rocky Mountain Raptor program, you can go to rmrp.org. There is a wish list that I'll include a link to where they need equipment to help with the birds. And you can also contact them at rmrp.org about maybe helping feed the birds, as they're always looking for more food for these hungry guys. So what I want to talk about in this video, for those who are here for Old Norse language and linguistics, is Old Norse words for falcon and the fascinating stories that the three major words for falcon in Old Norse tell us, not only about the history of Old Norse, but the history of other languages. In Old Norse, we see falki in Old Icelandic, falkr in Old Swedish. This is clearly related to other words for falcon in other European languages. English falcon, German falke, Dutch valk, clearly closely related. In modern Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, you also see falk, and Faroese falkr, Icelandic falki. It's clearly are related. Now, in Latin, we have falco, and derivative languages have similar words. Italian falco, French faucon, Spanish halcon, etc. But it is impossible for that Latin word and the Germanic word to be cognate, because you wouldn't have an F in both, right? Grimm's law says that an F in a Germanic language is a P in Latin. So these aren't cognate. One of the two groups has borrowed the word from the other group. Most likely, the word is actually borrowed, and this is kind of the reverse the direction it usually goes, from a Germanic language into Latin. This would then be presumably related to the same root as English fallow, originally meaning pale, like in fallow deer. So it's the pale bird, oddly enough. You can't really see it on this American kestrel, which wouldn't be what a speaker of an early Germanic language would be thinking about, because he has kind of rufous feathers on his breast. It's something like a peregrine falcon has a pale breast, which may be where that name comes from. That actually means that the word falcon would ultimately be cognate with a Latin word like pallidus, which gives us words like pallid, pale, pallor. Now, there's another word that shows up in early Old Norse poetry, uglir, which is kind of odd. It doesn't really look like we can get a good native Old Norse derivation from that. It may ultimately be borrowed from Latin aquila, eagle, probably through an intermediary vernacular language like Gothic or Old French, where that qua could have gone to gua early enough, and also we could have gotten some I mutation going on there. Interestingly, in modern Icelandic, that uglir word is repurposed to mean Archaeopteryx, because modern Icelandic comes up with its own words for every kind of animal living and extinct. By the way, in modern Icelandic, our American kestrel, which of course doesn't occur in Europe or Iceland, is called skrúðfalki. That means well-dressed falcon. Which, I feel like Flint knows he's well-dressed. But the really interesting word for falcon in Old Norse is valr. This is actually the word that we most often see in early Old Norse poetry and prose. So for example, in Grágás, the earliest laws of Iceland, we see it is the law Vali skal egi veiða. That means one must not hunt falcons. That is included in the provisions for when you are on somebody else's property. You must not hunt the falcons there. Also, when Loki goes to Jotunheimar, to the land of the gods' enemies, he will often put on the valshamar, the falcon skin, which belongs either to Freya or to Frigg, depending on the version of the story. That same suit, which apparently turns him into a falcon because he's called a falcon, a valr, when he wears it, is just called the fjaðarhamar, or feather skin, in Thremskvila in the Poetic Edda. Now, where does valr come from? Because that doesn't look like the word for falcon in other Germanic languages, does it? Or does it? I do think this word actually is there in Old English and Old High German. There is a compound that we find in Old English and Old High German glosses of Latin words for birds, which is Welch-Havok. Now, that second element, Havok, is hawk, like English hawk, German Habicht. But the first element is reinterpreted by Old English and Old High German speakers as Welch, foreigner, rather than Welch, falcon. So it gets applied to extra migratory hawks, quote unquote. Ancient medieval people aren't super strict about how these terms are used. So it glosses, for example, peregrine falcon and stork, which are highly migratory birds. I don't think that's originally what it means. I think that this is actually that old falcon word that we see in Old Icelandic valr, which would be Welch in Old English or Old High German. They've forgotten what it means, and they're just reinterpreting that. It's kind of like when people say ATM machine, because they forget the M means machine. So Welch Havok is like falcon hawk. Okay, but this word Welch, which meant falcon early on, but also foreigner, there's a reason for that. This word is borrowed from the self-designation of an ancient Celtic tribe. Now, when I'm saying Celtic, you need to think about Central Europe 2,500 years ago, not Ireland 1,000 years ago. Remember that early Celtic speakers and early Germanic speakers are encountering each other and learning a lot from each other. Germanic speakers are picking up words like iron from early Celtic, rune from early Celtic. They're actually probably learning to write from early Celts. And the early Celtic tribe they're encountering is, or at least one of them, is the one that the Romans called the Volcae. Now, Volcae is their own self-designation, which means the falcons, which is pretty rad, right? This word, borrowed into early Germanic, is Walhaz, which becomes the word for foreigner in early Germanic languages. We actually still see it in that sense in Old Icelandic valr, where it usually gets applied to the French. And of course, Walch is the origin of English Welsh, right? Because they are the prototypical foreigners that the English are encountering later on. I think this word is actually borrowed into Proto-Germanic in both of its senses. Its real sense, which is falcon, and its sense in that tribal name, these other guys, the other tribe, the foreigners. It is only in Old Icelandic that this word is, that they remember that this word actually originally means falcon in the historical period. But that makes sense because it's not getting confused with that foreigner word as much, because Icelanders, the early Germanic speakers who were encountering the fewest foreigners probably. Whereas in other places, that competing word falcon, which is also probably a native word, outcompetes it because it doesn't have the same potential for getting confused with that foreigner word. Where does that Celtic word, Wolkas, which gives us like Icelandic valr falcon, where does that actually come from originally? It's probably an Indo-European root, I think. Celticists may disagree with me about this, but I think it's probably that Indo-European root well, which means turn around, spiral. You think about like Greek helix, which is from that root, or Latin revolve and words like that, which are from that root. I suspect related to the way that peregrine falcons kind of spiral and turn as they're diving. Celticists may dispute the validity of that development, but I thought that was pretty plausible explanation. Where does the actual word kestrel come from? French kestrel, which is itself probably actually from a Germanic word that's related to English crow. It's actually a root that shows up in lots of words for noisy birds. And kestrels are kind of noisy, both the European and the American version. All right, well, that was a lot about the language stuff. But Heather, what can you tell us about American kestrels and taking care of them here at Rocky Mountain Raptor Program?
Yeah, so this is Flint. Flint is an American kestrel, which is the smallest species of falcon that we have here in North America. And falcons are mainly going to be a bird hunting species. So when they're hunting their prey out in the wild, they prefer to hunt on the wing, and they have quite a few cool adaptations to help them with that. The most common one people can see pretty clearly is the malar stripe that's under the eyes. You can also see these pretty clearly on other falcon species like peregrine falcons and prairie falcons as well. That malar stripe acts as eye black, similar to what football players use to help redirect sunlight and protect their eyes from the sun while they're hunting on the wing. They also have longer, skinnier toes than other raptor species, such as the bootios or the soaring hawks that have much thicker, stumpier toes. And those long, skinny toes help them wrap around their avian prey And then another really cool adaptation they have for hunting birds is they have what is called a tomial tooth on their beak. And while flint may look unassuming as a bird, that tomial tooth actually severs the spinal cord, allowing them to make sure their prey can't fight back as they're hunting on the wing.
I don't know if these guys, did kestrels dive?
They can dive, so they also have a behavior that's pretty common to see out in the wild where it almost looks like they're hovering above their prey. American kestrels can see in the UV spectrum, so they will follow urine trails of rodents. And so if you see them hovering out in the wild, the chances are they're taking a look at those UV urine trails, and it's not uncommon to see them drop down pretty rapidly to catch rodents that are passing through on those trails. So they do shorter versions.
Okay. And you mentioned that Flint is especially fond of grasshoppers that he gets for himself, but also of rodents. I guess that's a pretty typical mix for a kestrel, huh?
Yep. So insects, small rodents, and then small birds as well. So taking care of American kestrels and other falcon species here at the Rocky Mountain Raptor Program is really cool. They're really great birds and really great species to have out in our ecosystems. And Flint here is a really great education ambassador.
And I hope that you'll take a chance to meet Flint and other cool birds of prey at Perry's Pizza, or watch RMRP on all their social media for announcements of other opportunities that you might have for things like open houses. And of course, reach out to them if you'd like to help with feeding these guys or taking care of their other needs, such as from their wish list. For now, from beautiful Colorado, wishing you all the best.